Folks, what I'd like to do in this video is really begin to transition from the Constitution chapter into the Federalism chapter. Now let me just give you a few things about the Constitution to kind of warm up. Number one, the Constitution, the father of the Constitution, is considered to have been James Madison. James Madison is considered to be the person that wrote large sections and is at least given credit for having written large sections of the United States Constitution. In addition, what he wrote is actually one of the shortest written constitutions in the world. If you don't include the amendments, the original draft of the Constitution was only about 4,500 words. And when you consider that it's been in practice for over 200 years, we only have 27 amendments to the United States Constitution, which means what they wrote when they wrote it has largely remained intact. And if you divide those 27 amendments over the course of over 200 years of American history, we technically get an amendment to the Constitution about once every 8 or 9 years, which means we're overdue for the next one because we haven't had one since the early 1990s. Now, having said all this, the Constitution is important for what it says. It specifically creates 3 different branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. The legislative branch is first, and it was put first because it's supposed to be the most powerful based on what the framers wanted. The executive branch is second. It was considered to be second in terms of power. There was a strong argument that they did not want to create another king. That's why the legislative branch was placed first. And in fact, when you look at the text copy of the Constitution, typically speaking, Article 1 of the United States Constitution dealing with the legislature is about 3 textbook pages. Article 2, dealing with the executive, is basically a little bit less than 1 textbook page, meaning it's significantly shorter, meaning they wanted to concentrate that power, the specific powers, in the legislature rather than the executive. When you look at the courts in Article 3, the courts in Article 3 were actually only about a palm length, maybe about half of a page, or a palm length, if you will, of half of a page in the textbook chapter. It is the shortest of all. And effectively, they decided to create the Supreme Court and little else, and they were going to allow future Congresses to fill in some of the blanks. When you consider that they created a legislative, executive, and a judicial branch, this is basically what's known as separation of powers. The idea being there are going to be certain powers under Article 1 that are going to be given to the Congress. For example, the power to tax or the power to declare war. There are going to be certain powers that are going to be given to the executive. For example, the executive or the president is going to be considered commander-in-chief. These powers are given specifically to those branches, and no other branches can touch them, no matter how powerful or how expedient it might be to do so. You've also got a concept that's known as checks and balances. So when you think about it, the Congress can pass a law. If President Obama today does not like a law that indeed is being passed by the Congress, he can veto that law or check the power of the legislature. The legislature, in turn, if they can get a 2/3 majority, can override the president's veto, which means they can check and balance the power of the president in the lawmaking area. Ultimately, this law that has been overridden of the president's veto, I should say, can get to the courts if it is challenged. And indeed, the courts can exercise judicial review, which will allow them to strike down a law that the Congress has passed. Again, a check, if you will, on the power of the legislature. The beauty of the system, really, is that if Congress really wants to pass this law, they can work along with the states to amend the Constitution. And when you think about it, if Congress is working with the states, ultimately who has the power over what the Constitution says? Well, in theory, that's going to be the people. And in theory, the people are the ultimate check as far as the government's concerned. So the Constitution is going to lay out checks and balances. It's going to lay out separation of powers. And it's going to do so in a very general manner. Put it in this term. It's very important what the Constitution says. It is going to provide the government with specific grants of power. But equally important is what it doesn't say. Because depending upon how you read the Constitution, you might look at it and say, well, if the Constitution gives me a specific grant of power, then I can use it. You also might say, if the Constitution did not prohibit me from doing certain things, then indeed I can still do them. So it's not just what it says, it's not just what it doesn't say, but indeed, ultimately, the power of the Constitution and the power of the legislature, the executive, and the courts. These are all going to depend on who is actually interpreting the Constitution. Because since it's written broadly, and since it's written with very few words, it can mean very, very different things to very, very different people.